Nationalism, pride that turned deadly. How identity, fear, and belonging pushed Europe toward war. Before there were trenches, before there were alliances, before the first shot was fired, there was an idea powerful enough to unite millions and dangerous enough to tear empires apart. That idea was nationalism. It promised pride, it promised belonging, but in the early 20th century, nationalism became something else entirely. It became a weapon. What nationalism really meant. At its simplest, nationalism is the belief that people who share a language, culture, or history should belong to the same nation. In theory, it sounds reasonable, even inspiring. But in practice, especially in Europe, it was explosive. Because Europe was not made of neat, uniform nations. It was made of empires. Empires filled with dozens of ethnic groups, languages, and identities, many of whom wanted different futures. Nationalism didn't just ask, "Who are we?" It demanded, "Who does not belong?" Empires built on fragile foundations. By 1900, several massive empires dominated Europe. The Austro-Hungarian Empire, the Ottoman Empire, the Russian Empire. These empires ruled over people who did not see themselves as one nation. Croats, Serbs, Czechs, Slovaks, Bosnians, Poles, Ukrainians, all living under rulers they often felt no loyalty toward. Nationalism gave these groups language for their frustration, and once people began to imagine independence, submission became unbearable. The Balkans, Europe's powder keg. No region embodied this tension more than the Balkans. As the Ottoman Empire weakened, new states emerged, but not peacefully. Borders were messy, ethnic groups were mixed, historical grievances ran deep. One country in particular became the epicenter of nationalist dreams: Serbia. Serbia believed it was destined to unite all South Slavic peoples. This movement, called Pan-Slavism, was about identity, liberation, and power. But to its neighbors, especially Austria-Hungary, it looked like rebellion. And rebellion inside an empire is contagious. Fear inside the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Austria-Hungary was a fragile construction. It was not a nation, it was a compromise. German-speaking Austrians and Hungarians ruled over millions who felt excluded. Nationalism terrified the empire's leaders, not because they hated identity, but because they feared collapse. If one group broke free, others would follow. To Vienna, Serbian nationalism was not just a threat, it was an infection, one that had to be contained. When ideas turn into action. Nationalism did not stay theoretical, it radicalized the young. Secret societies formed, pamphlets circulated, martyrdom was glorified. Groups like the Black Hand believed violence was justified in the name of national destiny. To them, assassinations were not crimes, they were statements. And history shows us something uncomfortable. Nationalism is most dangerous when it convinces ordinary people that violence is noble. Why nationalism made war inevitable. Nationalism did not cause World War I on its own, but it made compromise impossible. Because how do you negotiate identity? How do you divide history? How do you tell people that their nation should not exist? Empires could not reform fast enough. Nationalists would not wait. And when diplomacy failed, force filled the gap.
Ideas that kill.
Nationalism began as a promise of dignity, but in a world of empires, it became a trigger. By 1914, Europe was no longer arguing over borders, it was arguing over who had the right to exist. And history shows us those arguments rarely end peacefully. If this changed how you see nationalism, there's more to uncover. Subscribe to Hidden History Fact Vault for deeper history beyond the surface. Can nationalism unite without destroying, or does it always lead to conflict? Share your thoughts. Next, empires, colonies, and global rivalries. Why the war was never just European.